have, whatever money you're trying to raise, how much do you think your product, your idea is worth? So write a number. The second question is, how much money do you think you deserve? The third question is, if you're a VC, if you're an investor, how much money, if you were to give money to yourself, how much money would you give to yourself? Given how you pitch right now. And why? Why would you give yourself that much money? And then the fourth question is, if you were to upgrade your fundraising game, your money game, your kind of psychological, mental game of money, with one skill, there was one skill that you could use to upgrade your money game, what would that be? Okay, so this is just for you. If you want to share it with somebody else, feel free. But we don't have time. I mean, I actually just go into that very, very deeply. But one thing that you will notice, and I've seen it over and over and over again, is that those brackets that I'm talking about, they're real. I mean, they're as real as they are in your head. And so what you will notice is people, people say, oh yeah, I'm worth like 150,000, I'm worth 2 million. And then when you realize, how much do you really think you're worth? People will give a number, and that's usually the number how much they feel comfortable earning, and this is the number that they usually as much as they earn. And so something we've been playing with, and we've been exploring at Sept Hackathon with other scientists, is the whole topic of money shame. And where do those brackets come from, and how we can actually hack them? Because it turns out that there are brackets on both sides. So if you make too much, people feel shame about that. And if you make too little, people feel shame about that. And shame, from my perspective, somebody who studied for many, many years, shame is the most toxic human emotion. And it cuts very deep and affects them very deeply on multiple levels. I don't have time to go into that, but it's fascinating research. Moving swiftly to the second part, how we get coded and how we operate and how we can hack ourselves, is the hard space. And this is really the space that's probably the primary operating system, and it's the oldest operating system. The emotions by far run the show. And I'm a very cerebral person, and you talk to anybody in academia, and you see that still people admit that it's actually the emotions, the very strong emotions that run the show. And so, talking about money, because I actually want to frame it in terms of money kind of fundraising. Another question that I have for you is, when I say money, what's the first association that comes to you? What comes to your mind? Just think about that. So money is X. And so what you will see is that money is power for yourself. Money is security. Money is love. For a lot of people, money is love. Money is status. Money is achievement. Money is freedom. So in other words, money is a means to get something else. And that's really interesting, because that really starts, the story starts unfolding. When you actually think, what happens when I don't have money? What happens when I ask for money? What happens when I don't get money? If I don't get money, doesn't mean I'm not going to get off. Doesn't mean I'm powerless. Doesn't mean I don't have my freedom. Doesn't mean I'm tied. Doesn't mean that is inherently showing I have a low social status. There's a whole bunch of stuff happening here that happens when we actually don't get money, when we get rejection or whatever. And so this is up for you, and I'm throwing a lot of stuff on you, but I'm trying to kind of cover all the pieces of the complexity of the psychology of money. And so one thing that we work with a lot with people, especially entrepreneurs, is fear. And one of the major fears that entrepreneurs have is fear of failure. And it sucks. And in Silicon Valley, you go to Silicon Valley, they will tell you, embrace the fear of failure, and it's great. But let me tell you, it fucking sucks. Failing sucks. not getting money, getting to sort of really, really disease. And it hurts. And there's research showing that actually our brain perceives rejection as a physical pain. We perceive social rejection, so somebody saying no to our face, as a physical pain. It's pretty much the same neurological networks between physical pain and social pain. And so one thing that we work with on fear is there's a concept in psychology called name it to tame it. And the idea is if you're able to name your emotion, you're able to tame it. And so a lot of people, and I work with a lot of Google engineers, and I say, what do you feel? And they're like, nothing. I'm like, no, there's no such a thing as nothing. You're probably feeling so much so that your system has shut down, so you feel nothing. But most of the time, we feel something. And that intense feeling, something happens to our mind. And so a lot of people talk about fear as the saber-toothed tiger that existed, millions of years ago, and that it doesn't serve anymore, and we don't need it anymore. This is a caveman kind of feeling. From my perspective, fear is the most powerful emotion that we actually have to respect. And so the metaphor that we use is naming it to taming it. So in other words, the action that will happen is you actually, instead of being afraid of the tiger, you actually name the tiger. And so in psychology, what happens in psychology is when the fear kicks in, and how many of us feel fear? Or fear is an issue, fear it might be an issue. Yes, no? Okay, a little bit. Okay, I see everybody raising hands, excellent. And so what happens when there is fear, what happens is there's part of the brain that kind of takes over, and then the whole brain goes into fight or flight or freeze mode. By engaging the linguistic part of the brain, so in other words, literally saying to yourself, okay, I'm afraid, this is fear, or this is shame, or this is humiliation, or this is excitement, whatever it is. The other part of the brain, which is the Broca area, kind of turns on, and what happens, the two parts of the brain, the two hemispheres start to talk to each other, which allows you to kind of calm down the entire system and calm down the brain. And so one thing that I highly encourage you to do is actually naming the emotion and treat it, as an experiment. What happens when you actually acknowledge the emotion and name it? Because if you name it, you can tame it. So that's kind of the hard space. And about fear, I could talk for the next 2 months, but I have only 20 minutes, which I'm pretty sure are over now. But I will continue going because I want to cover more. And I want to talk about the body because I think the body is the hardware. We can't, unless the singularity happens anytime soon, this is not going away, right? You are physically locked into your body. And what happens is, when you look at human interactions, the human body interacting with another human body, the last thing we actually pay attention to is what people say. The very first thing we pay attention to, they say the first impression is 7 seconds. Actually, it's 0.4 of a second, okay? It's 40 milliseconds, 400 milliseconds. So it's a split of a second. And what we pay attention to as human beings is, first of all, we look at the body. We look at the body posture. And what you will see is just by playing with open pose, closed pose, you send very, very different signal to another person. So the very first person, when I judge anybody, and you're judging me right now, and I'm judging you now, but many of you I can judge every single one. But I look, it says judgment based on your body posture, whether twirling me, people leaning out. But just playing with the body, this body is the very first kind of thing that we pay attention to when we interact with another human. And let me tell you, when you pitch, and I've seen many pitches, and I've trained many people in pitches, this is the very first thing that comes out. How does that person come across? Just physically. Are they confident? I call it poor confidence. Or are they ashamed and scared or hyper excited, which is also, that shows actually anxiety. So the very first thing we look at is the body posture. Then what we actually see and hear is the voice. Do. And so when there's this research showing that actually dogs, they put dogs to fMRI, and it shows that dogs really don't really understand human language. What they pay attention is the pitch of the tone, and that's what they react to. In a way, you think of humans as, in a way, dogs. We also pay attention to the pitch. So high pitch, low pitch. We can detect fear much faster than we can see fear. We can detect fear from people's voice. And so the second thing we pay attention to is how people speak, how fast they speak, and what's the pitch. The third thing that we pay attention to when we assess somebody, before they even open the mouth, is the facial expression. So we pay attention to the mouth and the eyes. And what we look for is this slight smile, it's kind of like encouragement. And then finally, what we pay attention to what people say. And so, interestingly enough, my husband has spoken to more than 1,000 hedge fund managers, and he's a VC, he invests in hedge funds and startups. And I was talking to him about this presentation yesterday, and he said, usually what I look for is that core confidence. And he says, too high up is this jittery